Late night Louie coming at you on a crazy Wednesday evening. I don't know what prompted me to do this. Heard some news about different quarterbacks. We talked about the quarterback position on Monday, and I just had this spirit hit me like, you know what? I think it's time to really attack this quarterback thing aggressively. So, you know what we're going to do tonight? Is we're just going to talk about the quarterback position. And essentially, the entire episode is just going to be quarterbacks. So let's do it. Who else could it be? Me, your name, Louie T. Welcome to the 134th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. This is an episode not like any other. You know, I've done episodes like this in the past where it's just been really one topic and one topic alone. And essentially, it's a gem dropping session and we just let it ride. Not quite going to do that tonight. But this is the first time that I've done it in this format, the podcast live with you guys at night like this. So, again, went to the gym today and I was going in and I saw them talking about Aaron Rodgers. And then I read an article about Jared Goff. And then I read something else about Jimmy Garoppolo. And I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of stuff going on. And the Jared Goff, situation is really interesting. I've heard this before, and I think I know what's coming next. We'll talk about that tonight. Aaron Rodgers' situation is interesting, even though I don't think anything's going to happen. We'll still talk about him tonight. And I think there's a lot of speculation out there, as there should be. But I don't think it's going to be as much movement as people think, but I do think we're going to have unprecedented movement. Okay. We talked about this. Adam Schefter was right. I don't think his number is accurate, but I do think we're going to see an unprecedented amount of quarterback movement. We're not used to seeing this many teams change quarterbacks, especially teams that made the postseason. But we're going to have quite a few teams that made the postseason with new signal callers next season. I can just run off 3 or 4 right off the top of the dome. The Indianapolis Colts going to have a new signal caller. The New Orleans Saints going to have a new signal caller. I think the Washington football team going to have a new signal caller. More likely than not, we'll see. That remains to be seen. But the guy that started the vast majority of their wins, Alex Smith, probably not going to be their starting quarterback in 2021. And I could continue on. I mean, there are other teams that we speculate about the future of their quarterback position, like the Los Angeles Rams, like the Green Bay Packers. Even though I don't think anything ultimately happens with Green Bay, they're still in the mix. So we're going to take the time tonight to really comb over the quarterback position. We're going to talk numbers and everything tonight. So if you're really interested in what it's going to take to get Matthew Stafford and what your team will be on the hook for if you trade for Matthew Stafford, or if you're interested in Matt Ryan or one of these veteran quarterbacks, tonight's the episode for you, because we're going to talk numbers and we're going to talk about what more likely than not it's going to take to get one of these guys. And I want to give you tonight ultimately where I think these guys are going to end up if they're going to switch teams, where they will ultimately end up. And so without any further ado, before I start though, I do want to say this. We are going to transition away from this into a brief social media maneuvers. I'm a midnight marauder, and this is the perfect time to do it. It is nighttime tonight, so I'll take some comments after I'm done with my entire spiel on this gem dropping session. And I'm really going to drop a massive gem on your melon tonight, so hopefully you're tuned in and you're locked in. And if you got questions, well, maybe I've got some answers, or maybe you got an answer for me and I got some questions. So whatever the case may be, if you're out there, you want your comment read, go ahead, start lining them up. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent. That said, let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? Yes. Oh, yes, we shall. And it's going to be quite a long one. So saddle up, boys and girls. We're going to go ahead and take that ride. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. Before I dive into this quarterback conversation, just want to quickly gloss over this. This is not my thing. I don't really like to bring these things up, but you know what Chad Wheeler did? That shit is weak, okay? And the Seahawks moved quickly. For those of you not in the know, Chad Wheeler really beat his girlfriend up, or I would think at this point his ex-girlfriend up pretty damn bad. I mean, it's brutal. If you see the pictures, it's gruesome. He had the audacity to tell her after he was done. She said he was eating, all right, and walked into the bathroom and said, "Oh, you're still alive," while he was sipping on a smoothie. Like, this guy was heartless. Beat her till she was unconscious. She woke up and he was there eating, and then asked her, "Oh, you're still alive," as he was sipping on a smoothie. This guy lost his marbles. And I don't know what kind of a guy he is, but that shit is weak. Any man that puts his hands on a female for any reason, I don't give a shit what the reason is, shit is weak. Period. End of discussion. And the Seahawks moved quickly. They released him. His contract was up anyway, but they went ahead and you know, it wasn't going to be official until the start of the new league year in March. They said, "No, we're going to make that shit official now." So they cut ties with him. He says his career is over. That being Chad Wheeler says his football career is over and he's going to seek medical attention and help. He said that he had a manic episode. Whatever the case may be, his ass is done in the league, and good riddance. Hope we never see him again. This is Ray Rice territory. Don't think we'll see him in an NFL uniform again. That said, let's go ahead and transition to these QBs. So I want to start with the elephant in the room. Obviously, Deshawn Watson is the biggest offseason prize. He's the big fish out there in what is a growing pond of NFL quarterbacks that will be available this offseason. I want to talk about 9 guys in particular. None of the other guys really tickle my fancy. I want to talk about 9 guys in particular that could potentially change teams, that could change outcomes of games and futures of franchises. So Watson obviously comes up first because we don't see guys like Deshawn Watson going into the prime of his career becoming a free agent. It just doesn't happen. I've talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast, and the reason he's so intriguing is because you're getting a guy on what is a very affordable contract. It's amazing when you look at these numbers, and I told you we're going to talk numbers tonight. We're not just going to talk about some of the things we've talked about all on these podcast episodes about where we think guys are going to end up, how these situations are going to unfold. We're actually going to talk numbers as well tonight. And for Watson, what's interesting for the Texans, he's going to count $15.6 million against the cap for the Texans this year. Again, a very, very affordable number. If they were to trade him, that number then accelerates to roughly $21.6 million. So the Texans, in trading him, would be doing so to their own detriment, because it would then count as, about another $5 million or so in dead cap money that will be added to his base salary that they were going to have to pay him this year. So that number comes up to around $21.6 million that they're on the hook for if they should trade Deshaun Watson this offseason. So it really doesn't benefit the Texans in any capacity to trade him. But again, if he doesn't want to be there, you don't want a guy that doesn't want to be there, you make the move if you're the Houston Texans. And again, you're going to absolutely break the bank over somebody's head. I mean, you're literally going to pull up the proverbial draft Brinks truck, back it up, and have them load up as many first-round picks as you can get before you drive off. And so listen to this, though. If you're a prospective team out there and you're interested in procuring the services of one Deshaun Watson, this is what it looks like over the next essentially 4 to 5 years, okay? So in 2021, it's a $10.5 million contract, essentially, that you'd be on the hook for, because the Texans would be eating the vast majority of the contract, at least half of it this year. So as the team trading for Watson, you're only on the hook for $10.5 million. Sounds really good, right, in 2021. But obviously those numbers are going to escalate as the contract continues to age. In 2022, you're on the hook for $35 million. In 2023, you're on the hook for $37 million. And in 2024 and 2025, you're on the hook for $32 million a piece in each season. So what that essentially amounts to, if you're trading for Deshawn Watson, is a 5-year, $146.5 million deal, which equals out to and averages out to $29.3 million per season. That's a bargain, okay? That's a steal when you're talking about an NFL quarterback contract for a guy in the top 5. That's a steal, is what we call that in the trade, okay? Now, understand that NFL quarterback contracts never make it to the end, okay, after we get past a rookie deal. When you're on your second or your third or your fourth, you never make it to the end of that deal, especially the second and the third deal. You never make it to that 5th year of that contract. You always get an extension before that happens. So you're probably not going to make it to those last 2 years, more likely than not, if he continues to play at the level that he's playing at. By the time he gets to that 2023 season, and he's making $37 million in that year, and he looks up and everyone's past him on the quarterback pay scale totem pole, he's going to say, okay, enough of this. I need to be paid 50. By that time, the number per year will be up to around $47-50 million per year for quarterbacks. And he'll want his cut of the deal. He'll want his share. So those last 2 years of $32 million, probably not going to make it there. So let's just focus on the first 3 years. And your team's going to do whatever they want to do by the time you get to those final 2 years and extend them out. But let's just look at the first 3 years of this thing. 10.5 in 2021, 35 in 2022, which brings the grand total to $45 million, 45 and a half if we're being precise. And then $37 million in 2023, which brings the total to $82.5 million over 3 years, which equals out to roughly, we're talking what? 25 would be 75, 26 would be 70, 26 times 3 would be 78. 27 would be 81. So right around $27 million a year, roughly, give or take a couple $100,000. So $27 million per year for the 4th, 5th best quarterback in the league. Are you kidding me? I mean, who wouldn't do that in a heartbeat? It's not the amount of money of the contract with Deshaun Watson that you're inheriting. That's not the problem when talking about trading for Deshaun Watson. It's the compensation that you're going to have to give up to get him. If you're willing to go above and beyond the call of duty to shell out what the Texans more likely than not will be asking for, you're going to find that there's a very affordable contract waiting for you on the other side of this thing. His health is something that also concerns me. You're talking about a guy that's dealt with some injuries and has torn his ACL in the league already once before. But if this guy stays healthy, we know what he is as a quarterback. And to get him for less than $30 million, whether you go 3 years or you go the full 5 years, to get him on a contract that's going to annually pay him less than $30 million a year, it's called stealing, is what it is. Now, again, it's not going to be stealing because you're going to have to give up a pretty hefty price to get him in terms of draft capital and maybe a player or two. But the contract that you're going to get that is attached to Deshaun Watson, very, very affordable. So that's interesting, okay? That's interesting. And I don't know what's going to become of that situation. It sounds like it's beyond repair, but I'm not giving up on the Texans finding a way to salvage this thing. It doesn't sound good, though. It doesn't sound good. And more likely, as I've mentioned to you, I think he's going to end up in the NFC. If you're the Texans, this Jets thing sounds really appealing. Why does it sound appealing? Because right away you get to replace Deshaun Watson. If you trade him to the Jets, and it's the only reason you trade him in the AFC, is if you can trade him to the Jets. Why? Because you're more likely than not get 3 first rounders for them. And That first one that you get from the Jets will be the second overall pick. So right away, you get to pick the successor. You get to pick the heir apparent to the throne. Right now, you get your guy of the future. You don't have to wait. If you trade him to the NFC, it doesn't matter who is interested. You're more likely than not coming away. You're more likely than not going to come away with your guy in the draft in 2021. Okay? If you trade him to San Francisco, if you trade him to New Orleans, you trade him to Washington, you trade him to Chicago, one of these destinations that is thirsty for a quarterback like Deshawn Watson in the NFC, you're not getting a top 5, you're not getting a top 10 pick more likely than not. Okay? Don't know exactly where San Francisco is, but I'd bet any amount of money they're on the outside of the top 10. I don't think they're inside of the top 10. So if you are the Houston Texans and you have a choice between the Jets or any NFC team of your choosing, and let's assume that all things are equal. You know, the teams in the NFC are willing to give up just as much as the Jets are. The only difference there is that the Jets can offer you, and they could offer Sam Darnold if they really wanted to. They could throw Sam Darnold in the deal, and I would assume any trade of a big name quarterback to the Jets would include Sam Darnold, but it doesn't matter. You could throw him in there. They could not throw. They could say, "Nah, we're good. We don't want Sam Darnold. We just want your first round, draft picks for the next 3 years, and a 5th round pick in 2022. We're good on Sam Darnold. You can keep him." But at the end of the day, being able to draft the quarterback, outside of Trevor Lawrence, who's going to go number 1, being able to draft any quarterback that you like, that you so choose in the 2021 NFL draft is really appealing, if I may say so myself. It's almost too good to pass up if you're the Houston Texans. Because if you love Zach Wilson, if you love Trey Lance, if you love Justin Fields, you can draft him right now. He's yours. And you can start this thing all over again. So that's the only way I think he lands in the AFC. Other than the Jets, I think Deshaun Watson is going to be shipped off to the NFC. And ultimately, it's amazing how this whole thing has kind of shaped itself. But I think he's going to end up in San Francisco. It sounds crazy. I don't know if they have the means to make this happen. But we're going to talk about their quarterback situation here in a second. I'll just give you a little bit of a teaser. Jimmy Garoppolo is getting released this offseason. He will not be a San Francisco 49er this year. Trust me when I tell you this. And we'll get to that a little bit later on. But I think Watson ends up in San Francisco. That's my prediction right now, if I had to guess. And we'll find out. We'll see what happens. I'll tell you this. I've said this already. Matthew Stafford, to me, is the biggest domino in all of this because he's going to be the first guy to be traded. And so let's just transition to Matthew Stafford. All right. Going to be 33 years old in 2 weeks. We've talked about this already. He's as good as it gets in terms of a veteran that can help you win right now if you're in the market for that. If you're the Indianapolis Colts, if you're the New England Patriots, if you're the New Orleans Saints, if you're the Washington football team, if you're one of these teams that feel like you're on the cusp and you just need a veteran to come in and get you over the hump, Stafford's your guy. And here's what it looks like if you're a team interested in Matthew Stafford. So right now, the Lions, if Matthew Stafford is on their roster, it's going to count $33 million against the cap. Okay, he's going to be a $33 million cap hit. However, if they were to trade him, they instantly get a cap savings of $14 million. So there's only a $19 million dead cap hit if they were to trade and move on from him, which they are going to do. That is a definite. This is the only guy on this list that is guaranteed to not be with his team next season is Matthew Stafford. Okay, that's already been established. So they're going to save $14 million this offseason. That's huge for the Detroit Lions. Okay, they were kind of up against it cap-wise. This is going to give them a little bit of breathing space. So, in essence, this is what Matthew Stafford's next couple of years look like if you were to trade for him. He's under contract for the next 2 years. There's a third year option, but he's going to opt out of that and he's going to want a new deal. You're not going to get to that final year of the deal. So in my estimation, if you trade for Matthew Stafford, be prepared to offer him a 3-year extension right off the cuff. He's going to want a new contract more likely than not. So it feels good. The numbers look good. But when it's all said and done, I think you're going to ultimately end up paying Stafford another, let's call it $90 million or so, in addition to the 43 that he's already owed, maybe another $100 million or so, in addition to the 43 or 44 that he'll be on the hook for the first 2 years of the deal. So in essence, you'll be looking at something along the lines of a 5-year, $130 million deal, something in those lines. But when you're just looking at the first 2 years, let's just go with what we know. 2021, if you trade for Matthew Stafford, $20 million is what it's going to cost you, okay, against your cap. Again, that's like middle of the league quarterback money. That's Alex Smith starting money, okay? That's Ryan Tannehill type money that you're paying right there, $20 million. Like, that's nothing for a guy of Matthew Stafford's caliber, which is, again, when I talked about this on the podcast on Monday, when I said, you're going to be essentially drinking top shelf liquor at well and house prices, okay? That's essentially what you're getting here. 2022, he's going to cost you $23 million against your cap. Again, you're stealing. That's $43 million over 2 years, essentially. That's stealing. However, you can't assume that he's going to be comfortable after being traded with playing with those numbers hanging over his head. You've got to assume he's going to want more money. He's going to want, some security, some financial stability, as if he doesn't already have it. But you understand what I'm saying. So assume that a 3-year extension is coming. And that's going to be a pretty pricey 3-year extension, but it's the cost of doing business. But to know that over the next 2 years, you can get Stafford at a very affordable price, 20 and 23 respectively over the next 2 years, you've got to feel really good about that if you're a team trading for Matthew Stafford. And as far as the extension is concerned, that's something you would work out with his agent upon trading for them. And that's something you would know before you trade for him. You would already be in the works with his agent and figuring out, hey, what are we talking about here? Can we just work with these next couple of years and see how things go? Maybe you don't want to stay here. Maybe these first 2 years are abysmal and you want out after those 2 years. How about we just let these 2 years play out? You never know where Stafford is in his mental process with all of this. But again, very, very affordable veteran quarterback that comes in. And as I've mentioned already, he's a top 7 quarterback. He's the 7th best quarterback, if you ask me, in the league. And so you're getting the 7th best quarterback for essentially $21.5 million over the next 2 years. All right, per year, that is. $21.5 million per year for the next 2 years. Again, much like Watson, it doesn't get much better than that. And here's the reason Stafford's going to be moved first. He's the first domino. Here's why. Matthew Stafford is owed a $10 million roster bonus the 5th day of the new league year. Detroit's like, there is no way in hell we're paying that. Sorry, we're not paying that. So whomever is going to acquire him, you're on the hook for that $10 million roster bonus. So we want you to get your affairs in order, know what you're getting yourself into, because we're not paying him this roster bonus. So in essence, they want this trade to already have been consummated so so that when the league year, the first day of the new league year hits, that trade becomes official. He's now your problem, no longer ours. And so we don't have to worry about that $10 million roster bonus on the 5th day of the league year. So he's going to be traded. And most people in league circles believe that trade is going to take place before the Super Bowl. So you're talking about a window right now that extends over the next 10 days or so. Something's going to transpire with Matthew Stafford. I think it's going to be at some point next week, middle of the week. Because the Senior Bowl is going on right now. Everyone's kind of preoccupied with that. But we know deals get done at the Senior Bowl and deals get done at the Combine. So they're at the Senior Bowl right now. We could hear something as early as Monday or Tuesday after teams have met with one another and some people have congregated, and you come away from this thing saying, all right, we got a deal. All right. So I think we're going to hear something Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, maybe Thursday at the latest on Matthew Stafford's whereabouts. I've already told you guys, it's an AFC team. To me, it's really a 2-horse race. It's New England, it's Indianapolis. I think it's Indianapolis. I just don't see any way he doesn't end up in Indianapolis. They're ready to go right now. I mean, they literally have a brand new car. It's shiny, it's blue, fresh coat of paint. They just need a professional driver in the seat at quarterback. And they had one in Phillip Rivers. He got him to the postseason. This is an upgrade. You get Matthew Stafford, that's an upgrade over Phillip Rivers. And so they're ready to go. With that defense, they're ready to go right now. I think he's going to end up in Indianapolis. And it makes a ton of sense for where they are as a football team and where they're drafting. They're not going to come away. Their GM has already said, and I talked about his quote, he said there are a bunch of quarterbacks that I'm really intrigued by in this draft. We're not high enough to draft any of them. So he said if we were to draft a quarterback in the first round, that would give you guys an easier opportunity to run me out of town. If that guy doesn't succeed, I'll be run out of town. The faster I draft a first-round quarterback and he doesn't succeed, the faster you guys run me out of town. So he's not dumb. Chris Ballard is no dummy. He knows this team's ready to win and they're in no position to draft a first-round quarterback. He's going to go after Stafford hard and aggressive, and I don't think it's going to take, a whole hell of a lot. I think the Lions will be content with getting a first-round pick for Matthew Stafford. You could throw in a player or maybe a mid to late round pick to sweeten the deal if you so choose. But at the end of the day, I think a first-rounder gets it done. And I think that Matthew Stafford will be the newest member of the Indianapolis Colts when this thing is all said and done. But he's going to be the first domino because of that roster bonus that he is owed on the 5th day of the new league year. He's going to be the first one traded. So I think that first domino falls. And I think once New England isn't paying Deshawn Watson prices. They're not paying the type of prices that it's going to take to get one of these guys that can change the game. I'm going to tell you the route that I think the Patriots may ultimately take here in a second. But Sam Darnold is interesting. If you're into the 1-year audition type of thing, he's interesting because he's got a base salary of $920,000. Again, he's on a rookie contract, but his cap number is $9 million. So if you trade for Sam Darnold, I mean, you're on the hook for less than $10 million to try him out for a season to see if this is a guy that you could run with potentially in the future. Like, that's not a bad 1-year rental. I mean, hell, Marcus Mariota is costing the Raiders $8.5 million over a 2-year contract for $17 million. That's $8.5 million per for an established veteran. You're getting a young guy here at $9 million where you can try him out for 1 year and see if he fits. You sit down, open up the box, take the stuffing out, loosen up the strings a bit, stick your foot in, get up, walk around, see if it fits. That's what you'd be essentially doing with Sam Darnold. You take a couple of laps around the mirror, you look and see how it looks on your foot. You kind of feel where your toe is. Does this feel good? Do I need to go up a half size? Do I just need to get a brand new shoe? Do I not like how this looks on my foot? And if you like it, you buy it. And if you like Sam Darnold after 1 year, you say, hey, I got me a young quarterback. I don't have to worry about the quarterback position. I'm going to sign him to a long-term deal. If you're lukewarm on Sam Darnold, but you don't want to move on, you've seen enough, but you don't want to lock him up 5 years, that's too long for you, all right, then you can hit him with a 3-year deal, and with an exit ramp after the 2nd year. There's all kinds of ways you could finagle that thing. So Sam Darnold is interesting with the Jets. Obviously, they could take a quarterback at 2, keep Darnold for this 1 year, have him be the stopgap quarterback for the young guy that's coming in, and they could go about it that way. I mean, they don't have to trade Sam Darnold. It just makes too much sense to trade Sam Darnold. Like, why are you holding on to Sam Darnold when you could get some really good draft compensation potentially for him? A place like New England makes a ton of sense for a guy like Sam Darnold. Would the Jets be interested in doing business with the enemy in the division? Would they really put themselves in a position where they could be helping resurrect from the dead the New England Patriots with a young quarterback that they have given up on? I don't see them doing that, much like I've said. This isn't necessarily a he's got to go to the NFC type of situation. They just don't want him in their division, if I had to guess. So if they do trade him, he could go to any AFC team, not named New England, and any NFC team that is interested. So that's an interesting situation with Sam Darnold. We'll see how that develops. I surmise that they're going to trade him, but they don't have to do anything with Sam Darnold. That's the thing you have to keep in mind, is just because they're drafting a guy at 2 doesn't mean he's got 1 year left. They don't have to trade Sam Darnold. If they're not getting what they deem to be good compensation, again, it just makes too much sense. Even if someone said, I'm only giving you a 3, okay, fine. That's better than getting nothing for Sam Darnold, right? Like, just move on. So we'll see what they decide to do. Then you go to Dak Prescott, and now we're getting into that range of quarterbacks. These next 3 guys, they're not going anywhere, okay? So let's knock these guys out, really the next 4 guys. Let's knock them out one at a time. Dak Prescott, again, could he be on the move? Of all the guys on this list, every single one of them, with the exception of Dak Prescott, is under contract. So if you want these guys, you're going to have to trade for them unless they are released. Highly unlikely. So with Dak Prescott, he's a free agent. He can sign wherever he likes. He can sign wherever he likes. Yeah. Now the question is, does he really want out of Dallas? And do they really want out of the Dak Prescott business? I think the answer is no and no. I think they both mutually have an understanding that they both are perfect for each other. He's the perfect quarterback of America's team. He kind of fits what they're looking for, DNA profile of what it is to be a Dallas Cowboys quarterback. He's the perfect soldier for Jerry Jones. He's been a little bit more vocal of late, which is a good thing, because sometimes I don't necessarily agree with the hell Jerry says out of his damn mouth. But it's good to know that Dak has it in him to step up and speak up when need be. But for the most part, he toes the company line, which is what Jerry wants ultimately in his quarterback. And Dak has shown the ability to grow and get better as a passer in this league. Translation: Dak Prescott back in Dallas, it just seems too right. Again, he's got the Cowboys currently by the scrotum, because again, if he doesn't like their terms, he doesn't have to sign. And if Dallas is afraid, again, like they were last year, that they're going to lose him, they'll have to slap the franchise tag on him, or someone else will sign him. So they don't want to do that. They don't want to go down that road again. It's a very slippery, steep slope. I've already went through this before. If you're a Washington fan, you've seen this play out before. Dallas wants no part of the Kirk Cousins dilemma in Dallas. You want no parts of a second franchise tag, because after that, there's no point of return. After that second franchise tag, you're dead. Dead, I tell you. At that point, now you really are up against it, because that third franchise tag is astronomical. It's out of this world. You can't, the third franchise tag essentially doesn't even exist, because there's such a big poison pill in there. So They don't have the cap space to fit, $40 million or whatever it's going to cost them to franchise tag him again. I think it was 31 this year. It's 30% of what it was last year, I believe. So 30% of $30 million is roughly somewhere around, $9-10 million. So add that to the 31 that was there last year. You can do the math. That's $40 million. I just don't see how they are able to afford that in one season. So essentially what I'm telling you is that they're going to probably find a way to reach a long-term deal because they can't afford to franchise tag him again. And so they're going to probably have to submit to some of his demands in that contract. And there'll be some give and take. It won't be one-sided. This won't be a one-sided beatdown, although if he wanted it to be, it could be a one-sided beatdown. I don't think that's what it's going to be. I think they're going to be some give and take. He's going to have the leverage. They're going to understand that. And I think they're going to cave and give him what he ultimately wanted. I think the years were the big issue last year. He'll get whatever it is he wants this year to stay in Dallas. But, don't count Dak Prescott out of this equation. I am, but you shouldn't. Aaron Rodgers. So Green Bay goes to the NFC Championship game for the second straight year. They fall short, this time at home. And there was a lot of speculation after the game. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be back? Did he play his last game in Green Bay? And I was like, shut up. Get out of my face with that nonsense. There's no way Aaron Rodgers is done in Green Bay after an MVP season and taking his team to the NFC Championship for the second consecutive year. I get it. Jordan Love's there. They have, essentially invested in a young guy. They traded up to get him. At some point, they're going to want to see what the return is on this investment of Jordan Love. Yeah, but they got plenty of time to do that. Like I said, year 3 of that rookie contract is when you start to get antsy if you're the Packers. That's when you start to say, okay, we really need to find out what the hell we're dealing with here with Jordan Love. It's not year 2. You're not really that worried about Jordan Love going into his second season. You're like, okay, you can sit another year and learn behind Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to kill you. Year 3 is when you're like, okay, we got to get this young fella on the field and see what he's about. We got to find out now. So next year, I think it's his last year. What's interesting with this, though, is what Aaron has done since the NFC Championship game. He's been on Pat McAfee's show every week this season. And I thought he had some telling quotes about why he's chosen that platform to speak on. He said, I'm tired of people speaking for me when they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I figured I'd just come up here and speak for myself. Tired of people using my name and my likeness to make themselves relevant when I can speak for myself. So instead of allowing people to talk about what they don't know and, get some fame and some attention off of that, I think I just do it myself, So he's pretty much said that he expects to be back in Green Bay, and their general manager says we'd be stupid not to have him back in Green Bay next year. However, Rodgers also added at the end of that, this is the NFL, it's a business, and there are no guarantees in this business, as we know. So kind of leaving that door slightly ajar. It's barely open. Look, the one thing I can say is that Aaron is being somewhat belligerent in the sense that we're hearing, and I don't know how true this is. I can't confirm nor deny this. But Aaron is talking about he wants new money now. I want a new contract. And he's talking about how, the call wasn't his to not go for it on 4th down, and how he might not be there. You never know. He's kind of leaving things open and to chance. And a lot of this feels like a guy that's stirring the pot a little bit. You can tell he's a little annoyed by the situation the Packers have put him in with them trading for and drafting Jordan Love. And I think he's going to do, and I was reading something and I thought it was a great point. Forgot where I read it. But the person that wrote this essentially said he's I think it was Jason Lockhan 4. He's kind of, taking the Tom Brady route on his way out of New England, where Tom, you could tell, was getting a little fidgety. It wasn't as fun in New England. You could feel the end nearing, and Tom started to be a bit of an ass. Like, when did Tom Brady ever complain about money in New England? But when we got to the end of that New England deal, he started complaining about not making enough money. Why? Because he knew that was going to help him get out of New England. He started complaining about the lack of targets and this, that, and the third because he wanted out of New England. And, I'm not saying that's essentially what Aaron Rodgers has done, but, he's trending in that direction. Aaron hasn't been a big money guy. He hasn't been a big, they always have taken care of him from a financial standpoint. He's never really been in a position where he's had to complain for his in Green Bay, but you're hearing that. I don't know how true it is, but you're hearing him not happy about his contract situation all of a sudden. He's not happy how the season ended. He's not happy about how they traded for Jordan Love. He's not happy about their lack of weaponry that they've added over the last couple of years. That he's not happy that more likely than not Aaron Jones won't be back. So we'll see how that goes. Look, let's just get to the numbers quickly and then we'll move on, because I still don't think anything's going to be done here, personally. Aaron Rodgers, if he's on the Packers roster, he's due $37 million, okay? That's the cap hit. If they were to trade him, they'd be on the hook for 31 of that $37 million. So essentially they'd save $6 million. Is $6 million worth trading Aaron Rodgers? The answer to that isn't just no, it's hell no, okay? $6 million isn't worth trading Aaron Rodgers for when you still got a chance to win a Super Bowl. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, if you were to trade for Rodgers, hypothetically speaking, of course, these are what the final 3 years of his contract look like and what you'd be on the hook for if you're a team out there. $23 million, 25.5, 25.5. So essentially what that amounts to is $84 million for Aaron Rodgers' services over 3 years. We just did the math on that. That's roughly $27 million per year. So essentially, what you're doing there is you're putting yourself in a position where, is that? No, that's not 80. That's not 81. That's $71 million. 74, million dollars. 51 plus 23 is $74 million. So roughly you're looking at 24 and some change for Aaron Rodgers per year over the next 3 years. Easily you could see why he would want a new contract. That's not enough for a guy of his stature. But when we start adding in the age, Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old, okay? When we start talking about age, that's right in line with where the aging quarterbacks have been on the pay scale. Drew Brees, $25 million a year. Tom Brady in New England, I think it's, or Tampa Bay, I think he signed a deal paying him roughly $26 or $27 million a year, I think it was, in Tampa Bay. I don't quite remember the numbers on that deal, but that's the neighborhood. If you're a veteran quarterback, I think Phillip Rivers' deal was somewhere around $24 million for that 1 year in Indianapolis. If you're an aging veteran quarterback, you're somewhere in that $23 to $27 million threshold, somewhere in there, in terms of where you are on the pay scale. So that's right about what you would expect Rodgers to get. Now, could you rip that up if you trade for him? And, most likely what you would do is you just make it sweet. You'd sweeten that deal, with a bunch of incentives and roster bonuses and things of that nature, just to make him feel at ease about the amount of money he's making, even though it's not going to hurt you against your cap. Throw a $10 million roster bonus. If you throw 45 touchdown passes, here's another $6 million. If you eclipse 40 touchdown passes, it's, $4.5 million, something along those lines. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's going anywhere. So that doesn't really need to be discussed. Matt Ryan. It was a name that a lot of people bandied about this offseason when we started talking about veteran quarterbacks. Whoa, you could get your Matt Stafford. What about Matt Ryan? Well, first of all, it's Matthew Stafford. His mama named him Matthew. I'm going to call him Matthew. But in the case of Matt Ryan, he's not going anywhere. It doesn't behoove the Falcons to trade him. As a matter of fact, it'd be the dumbest thing they could possibly do. They're going to draft a quarterback. That doesn't mean that they're going to steer away from that at number 4. They're drafting a quarterback, if I had to guess. All right. But they're not trading Matt Ryan. That's for damn sure. Here's why. Here's why I can all but guarantee you Matt Ryan will be the starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons come week 1 of the 2021 season. Matt Ryan's cap number is roughly $41 million. It's 40.9 to be exact. Let's just round it up to 41. All right. If they were to trade Matt Ryan, that number escalates to $44.4 million. So essentially, you're eating the entire salary and you're going to have to pay an additional $3.4 million just to move him. Why would I inflict that kind of punishment on myself to move a guy that isn't looking to be moved? Just doesn't make any sense. Matt Ryan's going to be the starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons in week 1 of 2021. Now, what does Matt Ryan's future hold in Atlanta past this upcoming season? I can't confirm nor deny that, but he'll be the starter week 1. So any of the Matt Ryan conversations, let's dead those right now. He's not going anywhere. Okay. That would be the equivalent of the Atlanta Falcons committing salary cap suicide to move on from a guy that isn't clamoring to be moved on from. Doesn't make any sense. And he's still playing at a pretty damn high level. Oh, by the way. So Matt Ryan, let's go ahead and take him off the list. Doesn't make any sense. Jimmy Garoppolo. All right. For me, this is really interesting. Here's why Jimmy Garoppolo is fascinating. Jimmy Garoppolo has been injury plagued since he got to San Francisco. All right. This is a guy that they can't count on to stay healthy for whatever reason. Wasn't healthy this year. Wasn't healthy in his first full season in San Francisco. Was healthy for the most part last year, but even dealt with some things last year, or 2 years ago when they made it to the Super Bowl. But you just start with the injury history first. Then you get to his play, and that's been spotty at best when he's healthy. The 49ers know they can do so much better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Here's the interesting caveat. Garoppolo, if he's on the roster, counts for $27 million of cap space for the San Francisco 49ers. But if they cut him, they would free themselves of $24.2 million worth of cap space. That's right, they're only on the hook for $2.8 million if they are to part ways with Jimmy Garoppolo. Pretty safe to say that if they can land themselves a veteran quarterback this offseason, Jimmy Garoppolo is toast. He's done in San Francisco. Now, I don't know if they pull the trigger on releasing him if they don't have someone to replace him. A wise man once told me, don't quit your job unless you already have another form of income to replace it. If you're the 49ers, unless you know of a guy that's going to be able to come in and give you quality snaps at the quarterback position to where you don't fall off a cliff, and CJ Beathard nor Funny Face is going to do that for you. So why would you even do that if you didn't have someone that you loved coming in to replace him? So that's why I think Deshawn Watson is intriguing for the 49ers, because if they can get their hands on Watson, they could care less about, draft picks. In their mind, they're thinking we're going to be good the next 5 years. So they can have our first round pick for the next 2-3 years, because that's going to be 27, 28, and hopefully one of those years it'll be 32 overall. But if they can get out of the Garoppolo deal, which they can by releasing him, and inherit the Watson contract, it's like an even trade-off. They will lessen the hit. I've already told you the numbers for Watson coming up. So the 49ers are really interesting. I think that's the team that nobody's really talking about in the NFC, to me, that is a dark horse, because they can get out of this Garoppolo deal. And I want to add this on to Garoppolo's situation. If he's released, could you not see a reunion back in New England? This is what makes the most. Somebody brought this to my attention the other day in the comment section, and I said, you know what, that makes a ton of sense. And at that time, I didn't know what I know now about Garoppolo's contract, so I didn't think he would be released. So I don't think they're gonna go back and trade for Garoppolo. But remember, Belichick never wanted Garoppolo gone in the first place. That was all Robert Kraft's doing. Okay, Tom Brady didn't want him around. Kraft didn't want him because Brady didn't want him, and they forced Belichick's hand. Okay, he never wanted to move on from Garoppolo because Garoppolo was his way out of Brady's situation. You know, that was his way to move on from Brady and not have what happened this year happen to them, where they fall off the table completely and are looked at as a joke. You could easily see a scenario where they miss out on Matthew Stafford. They look around at the rest of the landscape. The Jets are like, we're not trading you, Sam Darnold. Stop calling us. And they look at the rest of the landscape in the NFL, and they're like, nah, we're good on Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Eagles aren't going to trade us Wentz. We thought we might be able to explore that. They reneged on that. They're going to keep him in Philadelphia. I could easily see them saying, well, we don't have to give up anything for Jimmy Garoppolo. He's out there. He's available. He knows our system. You know, same offensive coordinator when he left is still there. And remember, Garoppolo was damn good when he was with the Patriots. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Belichick thinks he can win if he gets a quarterback that doesn't throw up all over himself. They're going to have to add some more offensive weaponry. There is no doubt about it. They don't have enough, you know, out there. You know, getting Edelman back helps, but they're going to have to do a total makeover with the skill positions. And if they're healthy at running back, that would go a long way because they've got one of the most talented stables of running backs in the league. But they're going to need more receiver help. They're going to need some more help at the tight end position. They need a makeover. And they got some young guys that I think are actually talented, especially at the tight end position, that can actually help them. But receiver is a problem right now. But I think Jimmy Garoppolo back to New England, if he's released. And again, the dominoes have to be set up and then knocked down and set in motion in a way that allows them to then release him for that to happen. Meaning the 49ers would have to get their hands on a veteran quarterback. I still think Deshawn Watson is the apple of their eye. If they get him, they're going to release Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo then says, I'm going to pack my bags and go back home, which is New England. And, you know, then things start to come together. But Garoppolo is interesting because for the 49ers, $4.2 million over the next 2 seasons is all they will be on the hook for if they cut Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason. It's too enticing to pass up, especially for a guy that hasn't done anything for you. Again, if they don't find a guy, then you much rather deal with the evil you know than the evil you don't know. They don't want to go to Nick Mullins. They don't want to go to CJ Beathard. So, you know what time it is. That's an interesting dynamic there. If the 49ers can get them a guy, Garoppolo could be on the outs, and I could see him marching right back to New England. Jared Goff, another interesting situation. All right. And let me just add this to the New England Patriots situation as well. Let me just add this last tidbit before we move on. They're not in the business anymore. They don't have Tom Brady. They're no longer in the business of giving away draft picks. They're not looking to mortgage their future to say get a Deshaun Watson. They're not looking to do that. Even they wouldn't trade him to the Patriots anyway. But just as an aside, like they're not looking to give away, you know, first round picks. They've done that. They went down that road. That's why they're in the position they're in right now. So they made some moves. They mortgaged their future to win now. from a cap standpoint, even from a draft pick standpoint at times. They're not doing that anymore. They're looking to build this thing the right way. Belichick was crying about it last year. He's like, I'm not making any excuses. It's facts. Towards the end of Tom's run, we mortgaged the future. We made a deal with the devil so that we could try to win and hoist more Lombardis. And for the most part, we did. So we're not really upset about it, but it's costing us now. It's hurting us now. Anyway, Jared Goff. The Rams are in quite the quandary. Let's talk about, before we get to the numbers and Jared Goff's situation from a contractual standpoint, let's just talk about what this situation has evolved into and how we have gotten here. So, Jared Goff goes out, plays with a broken thumb, wins a playoff game on the road at Seattle. The big controversy there, he wasn't the starter for that game despite feeling good enough to go, and ultimately he had to play in that game. And despite not being able to start, ended up leading the Rams to a victory, right? The next week, he was the starter, but even then, Sean McVay was non-committal. After this man took you on the road and won you a game in which you didn't have any intentions of playing him, with a broken hand, the man gutted it out, won you a game, and you were still non-committal the following week, wanting to see the status of John Wolford to see if he was available. It's a slap in the face if you're Jared Goff. So essentially, you get to the offseason and all these rumors start to emerge about the unhappiness of Sean McVay with Jared Goff. And I get it. He was a turnover machine. I talked about how this Rams offense hadn't had a clean game all season long. Every single game in the regular season, there was at least one Rams turnover, and most of them by Jared Goff. Okay, he turned it over from an interception standpoint. He fumbled the football. They had issues with ball security, and Goff was the main culprit. That said, I think Sean McVay feels like there's a limitation to the offense with Jared Goff, healthy or not healthy. So, Les Snead, the Rams GM, steps up to the mic, and he's asked about Jared Goff. And something tickled my ear. And I got this same feeling, and I'm going to tell you when I had this same feeling. But he said something that tickled my ear a bit. He said, hey, look, man, Jared Goff's a member of this Rams football team right now, you know? And I said, my Louie T senses are tingling. So I had to go back in the old proverbial brain archives, like, when did I hear that one before? And then it dawned on me. Just 2 years ago, I remember Cardinals GM Steve Keim, when referring to Josh Rosen on the roster, saying, he's an Arizona Cardinal for now. I remember in the moment saying, that's not a very ringing endorsement of a guy that you just drafted last year. They're probably going to trade him. Right now seems like very temporary. Not something they view as a permanent thing. You don't need to tell me that he's a member of the Rams now. Like, you could just say he's a member of the Los Angeles Rams, period. You don't have to throw in that adjective at the end that changes everything. For now, or he remains a Rams player, any of that. Any way to describe his current situation. And so it got me to thinking, are they trying to get out of the Jared Goff business? I think the answer is yes. I think they are trying to get out of the Jared Goff business. Now, here's the problem. Who the hell is going to trade for that contract? Who in the hell is trading for Jared Goff? That's the problem. If they could, trust me, they would. If someone was interested, they'd trade Jared Goff in a heartbeat. The problem is Nobody wants your stuff, man. This is your merchandise, and nobody else wants it. All right? They're the team in the parking lot as you're walking back to your vehicle that rolls up on you and says, hey, man, I got these gold chains, man. And you're like, nah, I'm good, man. You sure? Yeah, I'm good. All right, man. They're that guy. They're the guy that's trying to sell you this car radio in the parking lot, or he's got these TVs for sale. And you're like, nah, I'm good, man. Thanks, but I'm going to pass. And I don't think they're going to be able to move on from Jared Goff. And here's why. Goff counts $35 million against the Rams cap this year, which is why they really would like to move him. They can't cut him, okay? So no talks of cutting Jared Goff. Here's why they can't cut him. If they tried to cut Jared Goff, the $35 million that they're on the hook for this year escalates to $65.2 million of dead cap money. In essence, Jared Goff ain't going nowhere via being released. So, not happening. That said, over the next 4 years, this is what Jared Goff's contract numbers look like. If you were to trade for him in 2021, $28 million is what you're on the hook for. In 2022, it's 26. In 2023, it's 25.6. And in 2024, it's 26.6. Again, you're not going to make it to the end of that deal. You never, with these quarterbacks, you never make it. That last year of the deal isn't worth the paper that it's on. Okay. However, looking at that, just playing with the numbers in my head, you're roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of $27 million over the next 4 years for Jared Goff. Now, again, that's not, if Jared Goff were, say, Kirk Cousins, if he were giving you that level of play, that's not a bad contract, okay? That's not a bad deal. $27 million per year for a good top half of the league NFL starting caliber quarterback is good money. That's not terrible money. That's not bad. It's not going to hurt your football team. If you're a team and you're signing a quarterback, they usually do it off of percentage of the cap. And wherever the cap is and you're signing that quarterback, what percentage of our cap is this quarterback going to tie up? Really, with teams, they want that number to not exceed 14% of their cap. They'd really like it to be somewhere in that 13% range of their cap that they're tying up with the quarterback position. But, for the extreme cases, it may be 14, maybe even 15. But for Jared Goff, $27 million per year isn't a good deal. You're looking at him and you're saying, and look, I don't think Jared Goff is terrible, but you can do a hell of a lot better than Jared Goff. I mean, if we sat down and we made a list of the 32 starting quarterbacks in this league, is Jared Goff in the top half of the league? I don't know. That's if he's in the top half, barely. Like he's 15 or 16, right? He's not too far away though. If he's not in the top half, he's 17, 18, 19, or 20. He's no worse than 20. But you're not trying to pay the 18th or 19th best quarterback in the league $27 million per year. That's not what you're interested in doing. For that kind of money, you might as well go sign Ryan Fitzpatrick for, $13, $14 million a year and keep it pushing, right? So I just don't see anybody traded for Jared Goff. So I think the Rams are stuck, and we're hearing that there will be an open quarterback competition next year in terms of Goff and John Wolford. That's interesting, man. Really, really interesting stuff there. But I don't see Jared Goff going anywhere because I don't think anybody wants any parts of that contract. And then lastly, Carson Wentz. He's not going anywhere, man. Again, the Eagles have done everything this offseason to ensure that he remains the starter in Philadelphia. They go out and get Nick Sirianni as their new head coach. He was the offensive coordinator in Indianapolis. don't think for 1 second that he didn't consult with head coach Frank Reich in Indianapolis, because Wright was the quarterback's coach in Philadelphia when Wentz played his best football. So, of course, Sirianni's going to ask Frank Wright, what do you know about this Wentz guy? What do you think about him? How talented is this guy? How coachable is he? Is he a good kid? Is this somebody that I can hitch my wagon to? And Frank Wright doesn't cuss. He's one of those guys like Phillip Rivers that just doesn't swear. And it's so great to hear him get fired up, because you would insert curse word here, but instead he says something like, man, that was so stinking good. He'll be like, man, Carson Wentz, he can freaking throw the football. I love when guys don't cuss and how they substitute words in there, and they say it with so much emphasis, like the word stinking or frickin'. Anyway, I can tell you this. Wentz is staying put. Nick Sirianni feels good about Wentz, which is why the Eagles hired him. They go and they get Shane Steichen from the Los Angeles Chargers, who worked very closely with Justin Herbert last year as the offensive coordinator in Los Angeles. And so when you look at everything they've done this offseason, it's geared towards molding and shaping and re-energizing Carson Wentz. And I just want you guys to understand, Timothy Wells, dadgummit, I just want you guys to know Carson Wentz can play. Like, I know a lot of you are down on him right now. He would have been a very interesting commodity this offseason had he come available. I think after Matthew Stafford, and we've heard already, if you've been listening to the reports on Stafford, that the Lions have received a phone call from over half of the league regarding Matthew Stafford, okay? And I believe every bit of it. I don't think that's just the Lions trying to blow smoke. They don't have to blow smoke to move Matthew Stafford. They're going to be able to pit teams against each other. Look, I'm getting a first-round pick for them. What more can you give me? All right? Their pick is at 16. You're sitting at 19. Why should I trade him to you when I can get a better deal here? You're going to have to sweeten this a little bit for me, Washington, if you want to. Come on now. Help me out here. So they've got a situation brewing there where they're going to be able to pit teams against each other. I think Wentz would have been the second most sought-after quarterback this offseason. He's not better than Watson, neither is Stafford, but they're more affordable. No one really wants to part ways with 3 first-round picks. You'll do it if you have to, because Watson is such a talent, but nobody really wants to part ways with that kind of draft capital. They much rather part ways with a second or first and move on with that guy having given up a first-round pick or a second or a third. And I think you could have fetched Wentz for a third-rounder. You wouldn't have even had to give up a first. He would have been someone New England and a lot of these teams out there, Chicago, a lot of these teams would have really been intrigued by Carson Wentz. And I think you would have been able to pit them against one another to the point where I think you could have gotten 2 2s, possibly even a 1 for Wentz when it was all said and done, because you're going to have so many interested teams. But that's not the case. He's not going anywhere. And he can play. I just want to reiterate this. At one point, we thought Carson Wentz was going to be one of the leaders of the new school of quarterbacks in the league. We thought he was going to be what Josh Allen is right now. We thought that was Wentz 2 years ago. That's what we thought Wentz was going to be. So don't forget that. Don't forget that Carson Wentz in 2019 with the likes of who's the receiver? God damn, I forgot the guy that used to play quarterback for Houston. That's the receiver out there in Philadelphia. Greg Ward. With Greg Ward and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and a bunch of other scrubs, Carson Wentz threw 33 touchdown passes against 7 interceptions in 2019 and helped the Eagles win the NFC East. Don't forget that. Don't forget that Carson Wentz just 2 seasons ago was an elite, young, up-and-coming NFL quarterback. And in 2017 was on the verge of winning league MVP before he got injured late in the season versus the Rams. Like, let's not forget that. He didn't just forget how to play football. It's a confidence thing. How many times have you heard me talk about confidence? in this league. And when you can see a guy struggling with confidence, it comes, it goes. Unless you're an elite player and you've got this air about yourself that no matter what happens, I know I can play and I can get it done and I'm one of the best. Your confidence is fleeting, man. You have a couple of rough games. If you're a receiver, you got some drops. Confidence starts to wane. You see a guy internally struggling to catch the damn football. You put a punt returner back there and he drops a couple. You telling me Jamison Crowder in Washington 3 years ago, he could catch the damn football. He can return punts. Guy was a beast at it at Duke. But he dropped a couple of them, he muffed a few, and all of a sudden he lost his confidence. It happens all the time in the league. Wentz lost his confidence last year. His coach didn't believe in him. The players around him stopped believing in him. He lost confidence in himself, and that's the worst thing. Other people can lose confidence in you. You can't lose confidence in you. He lost confidence in himself last year. And it didn't help that his head coach refused to run the football to take some of the pressure off of him. And it didn't help that the offensive line was in tatters and they had to keep subbing in guys in and out. There's going to be a bigger emphasis on running the football. They're going to stabilize the offensive line. Wentz is going to be just fine, I think, in Philadelphia, believe it or not. Believe it or not. I don't think he's not as damaged goods as many of you think. He's not as damaged as many of you think. This isn't beyond repair. You can fix Carson Wentz. We'll see if they got the right guy or not in Nick Sirianni to fix him, but he's not beyond repair. So he's not going anywhere. He'll be in Philadelphia, and he'll be your starter week 1 for the Eagles. So that was my quarterback dynamic. Let's get to the comment section. See what you guys have to say. Got a few super chats, so I want to knock these out real quick. Got one here from Mark Mullinex. Thank you for the super chat, Mark. Greatly appreciate you. My man Mark Mullinex writes, what about first round and Ryan Kerrigan from Washington football team for Matthew Stafford? Ryan Kerrigan is a free agent. You can't trade a guy that no longer is under contract. So you can't throw in Ryan Kerrigan. And this is another thing that we got to stop doing. And I've already chastised fans for doing this before. I'm going to do it again now here. You can't throw in stuff that you no longer want to sweeten the deal. If it's some shit that you don't want, you're souring the deal. I remember when Washington fans wanted to get rid of Josh Norman. And so in every trade talk, anytime they were looking to acquire, let's give them Josh Norman. They don't want Josh Norman from you. They don't want his contract. They don't want that. Stop. Every deal I'm seeing, we can give them Landon Collins. They don't want Landon Collins nor his contract coming off of an Achilles injury. They don't want it. Stop trying to throw guys that you no longer want into deals. That's not how this works. It's not how any of this works, okay? You don't get to discard some of your trash in a deal to make you feel good about the deal. Now, it's one thing if the player that you're trading for is trash that the other team is discarding and you're trying to discard trash. They look at it as, hey, let's trade our failed first rounder for your former failed first rounder, and let's see if a change of scenery jumpstarts this guy's career. That's how that works. Not, hey, let me get your elite stuff for some stuff on the decline and a first round pick. You don't get to throw some stuff that you're ready to discard away into a deal just because you no longer want that guy on your team. I need fans of teams to stop doing that. That said, you can't throw Landon Collins in a deal. Okay, be one thing if Landon Collins was coming off of a borderline Pro Bowl season and he was healthy. Yeah, maybe you could discuss throwing Landon Collins in a deal. You can't throw Landon Collins in a deal with him making, $15, $16 million a year at the safety position coming off of an Achilles injury. Who's eating that contract? Who's doing that? Nobody. The answer to that is nobody. So in the case of this one, Ryan Kerrigan, and that's not what you're doing here, because even if Kerrigan, say, had another year left on his deal, he'd be a guy you'd want to throw in a deal. He's not trash. But I'm just talking about other fans of the Washington football team, but around the league, I can't tell you how many teams I'm looking at them proposing a deal to get Watson or this guy or that guy, and they're throwing in these rando players, and I'm like, they don't want that guy. They don't want that. Like, I think I was watching, I think I responded to a tweet from my man MJ over at MJ, Sports Fan Entertainment. That's my guy. And see if I can track down this tweet that he had that I responded to a while back. I probably can't get it. It's been a while now that he sent that tweet out, and I've been tweeting my ass off watching these games. So I doubt I'll be able to go back into the archives and track it down. But it's a great example of what I'm referring to right now, if I can find it. And yeah, so he said, and he knows what's up. So he says they would never do in division, but Tannehill and a first for Deshaun Watson. I said, and my response to that was, that wouldn't even be close to getting him. And I put a bunch of laughing emojis. I said, you know better than that. I said, and just as an aside, they don't want your quarterback contract either. It's got to either be a rookie contract or draft capital or both. So, again, like, that's an example of him saying, hey, Tannehill, and I remember watching one of his videos and him saying, I don't know if Tannehill is the guy that can win you games in the postseason. He can get you there, and he's done that in the last 2 years, but can he win you a postseason game? Can he outduel Mahomes? Is he capable of outdueling, in the case of the game this year, Lamar Jackson, and he wasn't capable of doing it? That's him trying to get rid of a guy that he doesn't think they can win big with. Well, they don't want that guy either. You can't pawn off Ryan Tannehill and just throw in a first round pick and say, hey, this is a great deal. No, it's not a great deal. They don't want Ryan Tannehill. They don't want his contract that you just signed him to last year. They're looking to cut cap. They're looking to find a way to lower their cap number, not inherit another deal that's going to put them right in the same neighborhood of where they are from a cap standpoint now. And they're not looking to downgrade from, Deshaun Watson to Ryan Tannehill. And taking your 22nd first round pick isn't going to make them feel any better about that. That's trash. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, you can't do that and expect, got to be realistic with these deals is essentially what I'm saying. But anyway, I digress. Got me off on a tangent there. I can do that from time to time. I got another super chat. This one is from my man John Livingston, JL Smooth, as I like to call him. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My man JL Smooth writes, hey Lou, finally getting back into some football after Sunday night and that whooping that we took at the hands of the Chiefs. Why all of the hate for Darnold? I think he can still be great for another team. Are you asking me personally, why do I have hate? Because I don't have any hate for Sam Darnold. I was never a Sam Darnold fan coming out of USC, personally. But I have already acknowledged that the guy has some talent. He can play, and he showed me some things from an athletic standpoint this year that I didn't even know he had the capability of doing. That Thursday night game against the Denver Broncos earlier this season where he had the 46-yard touchdown run. I didn't know he had that in him. I didn't know he had those wheels. So Darnold's a much better athlete than I gave him credit for. We know that Sam Darnold is fully capable. In the end of the 2019 season, they had a stretch where they won 5 out of their final 6 games, and Sam Darnold was outstanding once he got healthy after he was able to clear the mono. They got hot late in the season, and they won some games. I remember them beating Dallas last year, in 2019 rather, where he was outstanding in that game. And he had some games down the stretch where he was fantastic. He's got some talent, man. There's no doubting that. I just think a lot of people have soured on him because of how the Jets made him look. And I think part of that is the Jets making him look bad. I think some of that is on their head coach or former head coach, Adam Gase, and some of the compromising positions that Sam Darnold was put into in some no-win situations. And, there's also that audio on ESPN on Monday night when he was seeing ghosts on a Monday night versus the Patriots. Those things all start to add up, and people have this negative connotation attached to Sam Darnold. But people in the know. If you watch football, you know that Sam Darnold is salvageable. If he gets to the right situation, he's salvageable. The guy's he's not void of talent. And I think he's got all the mental faculties upstairs that you need to be successful in this league. He's not a Dwayne Haskins type where he's not taking the game seriously and he's not getting in his playbook and he's not doing the things off the field nor on it to make you feel comfortable, even though he's got talent. No, I think Sam Darnold is a guy you feel really good about if you can get him in a different situation. I think there is a chance that he could go somewhere else and flourish. There is that. And that's why I said, if the Jets didn't think he was any good, they wouldn't mind trading him to, say, a New England. But I think they feel like there is potentially a chance for him to go somewhere else and thrive. And because of that, they don't want to trade him in the division. I don't think they're afraid of trading him intra-conference. I don't think they're afraid of, say, trading him to the Denver Broncos, But I don't think they would trade him to the Patriots. But short of the Patriots, I think they'd trade him anywhere. So I do think there's hope for Sam Darnold. I haven't given up on him, even though I'm not the biggest fan of his. Thank you for that super chat, John Livingston. I got another super chat here. This one is from Jordan Jones. Thank you for the super chat. My man Jordan Jones writes, Houston has a new head coach, David Culley. And we heard rumors earlier today, if this is in fact true, and you guys generally don't steer me in the wrong direction. You guys are usually spot on with these things, so I trust my man Double J here when he tells me that the Texans have made a decision with Baltimore Ravens assistant David Culley. That's an interesting choice. He came out of nowhere. We went from thinking the winner of, Bills Chiefs in terms of the defensive and offensive coordinator matchup of, Leslie Frazier, Bills defensive coordinator, and Eric Bieniemy, Chiefs offensive coordinator. The guy that out-schemed the other guy was going to get the job. And that didn't prove to be the case at all. As a matter of fact, I thought Leslie Frazier got taken to school, and he was sent to Houston on another interview. He completed that yesterday, and all signs pointed to him being in the mix. But then here comes this David Culley guy that I hadn't heard of to this point, and I'm hearing that this guy really impressed them, and he's going for another interview, and ultimately that's who they decided on. And I don't even know this guy's background at all. Matter of fact, let's look it up right now. Shit, we got time. Let's see what David Culley's past looks like, what side of the football he is prominent on, and what he specializes in, and what he will do for them moving forward. So in Baltimore, he was an assistant head coach, wide receivers coach, and passing game coordinator. So looks like he is an offensive-minded guy, and he's 65 years old, so he's a veteran. He's been in the game a long time, not a young guy by any stretch of the imagination, but it looks like he's going to get an opportunity to be the head man, and we'll see how this works. I can tell you that is not going to keep Deshawn Watson, nor was probably hiring Eric Bieniemy at this point. That ship had probably already sailed. But if there was a long shot, hiring Bieniemy was probably your best chance of keeping Deshaun Watson. I don't think this David Culley hire is going to inspire anybody, including Watson, to want to come back. So I think that's the last straw right there. That broke the camel's back. You hire Eric Bieniemy, potentially Bieniemy gets on the phone with Deshaun and says, look, man, come on. We can do this here. We can fix this thing here. I took this job because I wanted to have the privilege of coaching you. Like, that might have been able to take place. Watson may have been able to sit and stew on that for a little bit, because he's not answering the Texans' calls, but he would have answered Eric Bieniemy's call if he reached out. This is the last straw that broke the camel's back in Houston, I believe. I think this hire here veers so far off of anything that they were looking to do that I don't think this inspires anybody. I don't know if this inspires the fan base or not. I want to see what he does. The Ravens passing game coordinator, does that get you excited? What Lamar Jackson and company have been doing from a passing standpoint in Baltimore? Is that what you really want to base your offense off of? Obviously, he's been around the game for a very long time. He's 65 years old, so he's probably got his own things that he'd like to implement, and they might veer far away from what the Ravens have been doing in their passing game. But I can tell you this. That Jets deal sounds more and more appealing as the days pass, because you hire a guy like this if you think you can get one of these mobile guys that can move around. Because let's say you get a Trey Lance. Trey Lance kind of fits in that Lamar Jackson mold in terms of designing an offense around a guy that may not be the most polished passer right now, but he damn sure can run. And until he figures it out from a passing standpoint, we're going to use the hell out of his legs in the interim. All right. So again, I don't know if this is foreshadowing to what they're going to do in the near future, but looks like all of the head coaching vacancies have now been filled as the Houston Texans make a decision. Thank you, Jordan Jones, for that update. David Culley, Baltimore Ravens, ex-assistant head coach, ex-wide receivers coach, and passing game coordinator, now set to become the newest head coach of the Houston Texans. Got another super chat. This is from John McDowell. Thank you for the super chat, John McDowell, who writes, Lou, with what you know about Dan Snyder and his quirky picks, what's your educated guess about who he would prefer as quarterback and why? At this point, I'm hoping that the Dwayne Haskins debacle and debauchery at 15 in 2019 was his final selection at quarterback. He was responsible for Jeff George coming to Washington. He was responsible for I think he was responsible for Jeff George. He was responsible for Donovan McNabb coming to Washington. He was responsible for Robert Griffin III coming to Washington. He was responsible for Dwayne Haskins coming to Washington. All of which were epic failures and abject disasters. So hopefully, with Ron Rivera and his coach-centric approach, with all these new guys he's hired, and Martin Mayhew and Marty Herney, and all these guys that are in here, Dan's got so many buffers keeping him away from anywhere close to the war room in the decision-making process when it comes to the quarterback position. I don't think he's going to be involved in this process. That said, it's still Daniel Snyder. And who would he prefer as the quarterback? I think he would want one of these top guys. I think he would want, obviously, the guy, honestly, it's always been about marketing. It's never been about on-the-field production. What can this guy do? Can he win us ball games? How good is this guy in the classroom? How good is this guy on the field? It's always been about marketing for Daniel Snyder. And every one of those moves I just talked about, with the exception of Jeff George, that was more about Snyder not having any fun. Outside of that, the McNabb move, the Robert Griffin III move, the Dwayne Haskins moves, all were made for marketing purposes. McNabb, big name in the league at the time. You wrestle him away from Philadelphia. That's what he felt like he was doing, but they were fleecing us, as they've done quite often when we've traded with Andy Reid at any point. But you get McNabb, he's a name. It's easy to sell tickets with, number 5 on your marquee and on your programs that you're handing out to season ticket holders. That was what that was about. He was a disaster in Washington. He was at the end of his career. The Robert Griffin III trade up to number 2 to get him, again, he saw marketing opportunities. He saw dollar signs. Robert Griffin III was, to me, one of the biggest geniuses when it came to marketing that we've seen over the last decade. For a guy that hadn't done shit, to have all the marketing that he had coming into his rookie season, he'd done a hell of a job, even down to the socks, with the Superman socks and all the shit that he pulled before even throwing a pass for Washington. He already had Subway endorsements and all kinds of shit that he was already endorsed with before he signed, before he took his first snap as Washington football team quarterback. And then, after the 2012 season that he turned in, the Rookie of the Year campaign, his shit just went through the roof. And that's what Daniel Snyder envisioned when he went after Griffin, but he never took into consideration his character or his leadership qualities or lack thereof, his personal responsibility and culpability for things that don't go right. All of that shit, he never pays attention to any of that stuff. Same thing with and there was a very huge amount of immaturity with Robert. Same can be said for Dwayne on a different level. Robert was more of a selfish guy, me, I, and Dwayne, it's not as much a me, I type of thing as it was. He just wasn't willing to put in the work. Robert thought he was better than what he was, and when something didn't go right, he pointed fingers at everybody but himself. With Dwayne, it was a totally different issue. But I think I said all that to say this, and I'll go went off on another tangent. He would want someone that is marketable. I think any of the top 4 quarterbacks in this draft are marketable. So he would want any of those guys, and he would want Matthew Stafford is a big name, so he'd want him. Deshawn Watson. I think of all the quarterbacks, Snyder would want Watson the most. He seems to have an affinity for getting a brother to DC to be the starting quarterback. He seems to have an affinity for that. And Watson is the biggest name. Watson is the youngest quarterback. Watson is the guy with the biggest star power. So I think he would do just about anything, which is why you have to keep him away from any football decisions, because he is the type of guy that 3 first-round picks? How about we make it 4 for Deshaun Watson? Like, remember, this is the same guy that was willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Chad Johnson once upon a time, before he was Chad Ochocinco. When he was the artist, the wide receiver formerly known as Chad Johnson, he was willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Chad Johnson. It's crackhead prices. But that's the kind of stuff that he was on. So we know he's willing to do something stupid. He wanted to trade up to take Dwayne in front of the Giants because he was afraid the Giants were going to take him at 6. We are so thankful that the draft room and all of the scouts and the front office members were able to talk him off the ledge and say, hey, he'll be there at 15. Relax. We'll get him. He was ready to trade up. So I know he would be willing to do something very foolish for Deshaun Watson. That's the guy that he wants more than any of these other guys. It's Watson. He's the biggest name. He's got star power. He already comes with a reputation that lends itself to him coming in and being the big man on campus right away. So that's the guy that, without a doubt, he would want. Will he get him? I don't know. But that's why. And that's the guy for me. Got another super chat. This one is from Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Metaphor, greatly appreciate you. Metaphor, who writes, Watson to Miami, maybe. Get that number 3 pick back. Again, it's so early to give up on Tua. And if you trade Watson to Miami, obviously you would want Tua in exchange. I've heard that they're not interested in Tua or the Texans. So I don't really know that is something that they would want to do. Maybe they say, hey, you keep Tua. We're not interested. But we'll take that number 3 off your hands. We'll take your first rounder next year. We'll take your first round the year after that. And we'll call it even. You know, if they're willing to acknowledge that they might have made a mistake at number, what was it, 5 last year with Tua this early. I mean, look, the best teams in the league are able to acknowledge when a mistake is made and move on. I've always said the first step on the road to recovery is acknowledging that there's a problem. If the Dolphins can already acknowledge that, hey, we got this thing wrong after a year, more power to them. I think it's too early. You know how I feel about that. I hate when people do this with especially with young quarterbacks, more so than any other position out there. That said, if you're in the building with a guy every day and you see him and you know what you know and you know what it takes to win in this league and you know when you see it and you know he doesn't have it and you're ready to move on and you can get Deshawn Watson, okay. I mean, I get it. I just don't. And for the Texans, they're like, hey, I'll do it. Anything in the top 5, I think they're willing to do it because it gives them a direct shot to get a quarterback. I mean, it's a direct pipeline to getting the replacement for Deshaun Watson. You don't have to wait or guess or try to figure out who the replacement is. You get to draft that guy right away at 2 or at 3. That's why the Jets and the Dolphins are so intriguing. And it's not a coincidence. That's why those 2 teams' names have come up. Because it's a direct pipeline to replacing what you're going to move on from, potentially. So it makes a ton of sense. But I just don't know if the Dolphins are going to sign up for that. Got another super chat here from John Livingston, my man JL Smooth. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. JL Smooth, who writes, Lou, we had a little debate earlier in the chat, and I'm curious. Who is your top 5 receivers in the league? Wow. Okay. So you're asking me to make a list. Let me get my pen and pad out real quick and see what we can come up with. I'll make a rough draft list and then I'll somehow configure this into 5 guys. So you've definitely got Stephon Diggs. You've got Hopkins. You have, it's so weird because this year you had guys that you normally see dominating, not dominating this year, but you don't want to forget them. I mean, Michael Thomas set the NFL record for most receptions in a season, just, a season ago. So, he'd probably still be in my top 5 discussion. So Thomas, even though, if we're just going off of, if this were an NFL Network top 100 players of 2020, then Michael Thomas obviously wouldn't even make the list. But if you're going off of the best receivers in the league, Michael Thomas is one of those guys if he's healthy. All right, let's just go through each division. I don't know why I do this. The easy way is to just go through every division and see if you can pull out players. So starting the NFC East, I always start in the NFC East. Dallas, I guess you'd put down Cooper from that trio of receivers. He wouldn't be in my top 5, but Cooper would be the only guy you would consider. The Eagles don't have anybody. Washington has McLaurin, but he wouldn't be in my top 5 either, but you put him down on the list. The Giants don't have anybody, and we just went through all 4 of those teams. Then you go to the NFC North. Devontae Adams is in my top 5, so put him down. The Bears' best receiver would be Allen Robinson, so I put him down. He would not be in my top 5. I've done that already. I think I had him in my number 7 or 8 receiver when I had done a list earlier before the season started. Detroit has Kenny Golladay. He would not be in my top 5, but you put him down. The Vikings have Jefferson. He would not be in my top 5, but he's very intriguing. So you move on to the NFC South. Evans, the Buccaneers, would not be in my top 5, I don't think. He's on the fringe, but you put him down. You go to the Saints. I already have Michael Thomas. You go to the Panthers. They don't have anyone. And you go to the Falcons. Julio Jones, even though it was a down year for him, still Julio. So he was definitely in my top 5, and I think he's still in my top 5. You move on to the NFC West. I already got Hopkins. DK Metcalf would be on this list. I don't think he's a top 5 receiver, but he's getting damn close. Then you would go to the Rams. They don't have one. And you would finish up with the 49ers. They don't have one. Then you would go to the AFC. You go to the AFC East. Patriots don't have one. The Jets don't have one. The Bills already said Diggs. And you have the Dolphins. They don't have one. You go to the AFC South. I guess you would put down A.J. Brown. He's not in the top 5, but you put him down. You go to the Colts. They don't have one. And then the Jags don't have one. You go to the AFC West. Tyreek Hill is in my top 5. I can assure you of that right now. The Raiders don't have one. Chargers have Keenan Allen. He's not in my top 5. Remember, we talked about him on the podcast, as a matter of fact. Is he even a top 10 receiver? I think there's a little bit of disrespect there on my part, but he's not in my top 5. And then you go to the Broncos. They don't have one either, even though going into the season, I thought that my man out of SMU, Cortland Sutton, was starting to emerge, but he took a massive step back this year with his injuries. So he's not on the list. And then you get to we did the South, the East. Now you go to the North. Steelers don't have anyone. The Ravens don't have anyone. The Bengals don't have anyone. And the Browns don't have anyone. So of this list of Diggs, Hopkins, Thomas, Cooper, McLaurin, Adams, Robinson, Golladay, Jefferson, Evans, Jones, Allen, Hill, Metcalf, Brown, in no particular order, Diggs is in my top 5. Julio Jones is still in my top 5. Tyreek Hill is in my top 5. DeAndre Hopkins is in my top 5. That's 4. And my last top 5 pick would probably go to Devontae Adams. So, in no particular order, Diggs, Hopkins, Adams, Jones, Hill are my top 5 receivers in the league right now. It's subject to change, obviously. A year or two from now, Metcalf might be in that discussion. Evans, what's crazy is Evans and Allen, I put them in the same boat. I think I somewhat disrespect them because they're not flashy. They haven't played on winning teams, so it's easy to dismiss them. And I look at them and I say, what is your redeeming quality? Like, why are you better than the next guy? And for Allen, there isn't anything that Keenan Allen I'm speaking of. There's nothing that really stands out. He's just really good. He's not fast. He's an exceptional route runner, but other guys are exceptional route runners. Like, you got to be, better than just that. With Evans, he's big and a combination of speed. It's interesting because he doesn't strike you as a burner, but he gets behind guys quite often. And he's the first receiver in NFL history to have, 7 straight years to start a career of 1,000 yards receiving. That's a phenomenal feat. No one else has done it in NFL history. There's something to be said about that consistency. But when I think of a top 5 list, I'm looking at it from the perspective of, if I'm starting a team, who am I taking? Who are the guys that I want on my team right now? And it would be Stephon Diggs, it would be DeAndre Hopkins, it would be Devontae Adams, it would be Tyreek Hill, it would be Julio Jones. Because in some way, shape, or form, these guys are freaks. In some way, shape, or form. With Jones, height, weight, speed specimen. He's been one of the best we've ever seen. Hill is just a nightmare to cover with his speed. It's just ridiculous. Diggs has shown you the full spectrum of speed, hands, high volume pass catcher, can be tough on third downs, but can also get over the top. Hopkins, best hands in the league, hands down. And Adams, to me, when we talk about just having a little bit of everything, he's got it. Enough speed to scare you vertically. Not a burner, though, by any stretch of the imagination. I love his releases off the line of scrimmage. I don't think anybody releases better. His route running is second to none in the league. And then his hands are A1 official. So, he had, 115 catches this year? The volume of catches is ridiculous with Adams. When he's healthy, and he had, 15, 16, 17 touchdowns, 18 touchdowns, some ridiculous number. He's a red zone machine. Those are my 5. Anyway. But if we were to keep going, Evans and Allen and Metcalf and, some of these other guys will start to fill in the rest of that discussion. Got another super chat. This one is from Metaphor. Thank you for doubling up. Double up. My man Metaphor writes, bro, just skipped over my super, LOL. I did. I came back and got it, though. I apologize for that. I don't know how I missed that, but I saw it on the rebound and I came back and I got it. My bad. Got another super chat. This one is from, Martin Matthews, my man Double M. Really appreciate you. My man Martin Matthews writes, hey Louie, it seems that after this draft, the NFC East will have the best receivers except us. How do you feel about moving up a couple of spots from 19 to get a top tier wide receiver? I'm not interested in doing that. I don't worry about what everybody else is doing in the division. I just worry about us. I've told you that before. The only time I start worrying about what other teams are doing is when it affects us. Just because the Cowboys have a trio of beast receivers and the Giants look like they're going to land themselves a top-tier wide receiver, and the Eagles may do the same, that's up to them how they try to improve their roster. That's not on us to worry about. Our job is to stop those offenses, not to worry about bolstering our own wide receiver core. We need a receiver. That's no secret. We've got Terry McLaurin. I don't think they want another young guy. We've got enough of those. I've already laid this out. We got enough young guys on the roster. It's young guy after young guy after young guy after young guy. I think they are more interested in adding a veteran, which is why they went after Amari Cooper so vigorously last offseason. I think they're in that frame of mind where we need to add a young but still veteran wide receiver to what is a very young group of receivers. Again, it's the blind leading the blind. When you look at our wide receiving core from last season, it's Terry McLaurin, who was in his second year, now going into his third year. You're going to get Kelvin Harmon back from injury. He's going into his third season, really his second year because he was injured for all of last season. So essentially you're talking about a sophomore. It's Antonio Gandy Golden, who had an abysmal rookie season. Really, he's a redshirt freshman because last year was a redshirt year. So he's essentially a rookie all over again, but it'll be his second year. You're talking about Isaiah Wright, an undrafted rookie who will be going into his second season if he makes the team. You're talking about Steven Sims Jr., who was an undrafted rookie going into his second year, now will be going into his third if he makes the roster. And then you're talking about Cam Sims, who was in his fourth year, I believe. And again, this was his first year actually playing, so those other years really don't even matter. So it's a young group of receivers. They are going to look to add a veteran, which is why Dontrell Inman early in the season was so vital. But ultimately at the end of the season, they had gotten at wit's end with Dontrell Inman to the point where they released him and then brought him back only to have him be inactive down the stretch. So I said all of that to say this. I don't think they want another young guy because you'd just be adding another youthful, inexperienced wide receiver to a group of receivers that they think need a veteran presence. So I don't see them moving up from 19. Furthermore, you don't need to move up. If you want a receiver, there'll be plenty of them available at 19. You don't have to move. You have to give up draft capital to go up and get anybody. Like, none of the big three are going to be around. You know, the two Alabama guys or Jamar Chase, none of those guys are going to be around. I think the next guy up could be potentially LSU's wide receiver, Marshall. But again, Rashad Bateman will be there. Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft had us taking Kadarius Toney out of Florida. There'll be plenty of options available. To me, Kadarius Toney is essentially Curtis Samuel all over again. So if they're just gonna go draft. I mean, they're just gonna sign Curtis Samuel. They're not gonna draft Kadarius Toney. I think that's how that. Now, if they don't get Curtis Samuel, they may view Kadarius Toney as Curtis Samuel 2.0, and they may draft him. I don't know. But what I'm essentially telling you is you don't have to move up to get something at receiver at 19. You're in a perfect spot that something will fall to you at 19 of good value at receiver. You don't have to do anything significant like move up. So, they're not going to be impacted by what other teams around us in the division are doing. In the fact that they'll go out and get a receiver. If anything, they'll look at what the other teams in the division are doing at receiver and say, we need to beef up our secondary. And they may be more inclined to draft a corner, especially if they don't re-sign Ronald Darby. They'll be more inclined to do that than they would to go draft a receiver because everybody else around us is drafting a wide receiver. So thank you for the super chat. John McDowell, thank you for the super chat. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. John McDowell, who writes, where would you put OBJ on the wide receiver list, even though he didn't ball out? For me, he is an afterthought at this point of his career. And it's crazy because I bet you he had 1,000 yards his first year in Cleveland. Obviously, he didn't hit that this year with the injury. Let's go look at his numbers, though. I'm just not an OBJ guy. It just seems like he's a talent, obviously. But it doesn't seem like – it seems like he's overhyped is essentially what I'm getting at. So in New York, his first 3 years, he was over 1,300 yards every single year, which is ridiculous. Then he had injury plague 2017, only 300 yards in that season. In the Giants, his last year, 1,052 yards, so he hit 1,000. In Cleveland, his first year, he had 1,035 yards. And this year, he had 319. For me, the big problem with him, and you could say this about other guys like Julio Jones, for instance, they're not a number of touchdowns here. And I just like when I look at him, he's a big play waiting to happen, but he's also a guy that can have 3 catches for 17 yards. But he could also have, 3 catches for 117 yards. If he's healthy, he's on this list. He's not a top 5 receiver. He's on this list though. I disregarded him because he wasn't healthy this year, and I didn't feel too strongly about him his first year in Cleveland. That's why I left him off the list. Had he been coming off of a big year in 2019, his first year in Cleveland, and then he got injured, like Michael Thomas, for instance, is a great example. Really similar situation. Thomas didn't do anything this year. Doesn't even warrant being, last year, you make a list of the top 5 receivers. Michael Thomas might be at the top of the list. He's not even in my top 5, but he's still in that, discussion, though. He's on the fringe. Odell Beckham Jr. deserves to be on this list, okay, in terms of, these receivers. That's probably just a little bit of shade on my part. I'm not a big, massive ODB fan. Shame on you if you step to the old dirty Beckham. I'm not a big Beckham fan, but he's talented. There's no denying that. But I don't know what to do with him. I really don't. I don't feel like he's a big enough difference maker. Feel like he's a loser. Anyway, I digress. He is a hell of a football player. Let's just get that straight. Got another super chat. This one is from my man Martin Matthews. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Double M. Greatly appreciate you. My man Martin Matthews writes, "Hey Louie, I hear you, man, but we have no speed. Help me feel better. We need speed." And I think they feel the same way, which is why you're going to probably get a Curtis Samuel this year in free agency. I think they're going to go after him. Marty Herney is here, and Ron knows all about Curtis Samuel, had him in Carolina. Curtis Samuel had a hell of an audition against us in week 16 when he came and lit us up for like over 170 yards of total offense. They're all over this guy in free agency. I think he'll end up being in Washington. That will be the speed that they'll add. I told you I wouldn't be opposed to adding John Ross. Like, I wouldn't mind fully turning over this receiving core. Like, I'm not attached to any of these guys. Outside of AGG, who you just spent a 4th round pick on, and Kelvin Harmon, I'm not attached to any of these guys. Cam Sims, Steven Sims Jr., I'm not attached to any of these guys. All of them could go for all I care. None of these guys impress me to the point where I'm like, they got to be back. Steven Sims Jr., bunch of drops this year, was ineffective as a punt returner. You know how I feel about him. I like him a lot. But if you get John Ross or you get or Curtis Samuel, they can do what he does at a much higher level. You don't have to deal with Steven Sims. You can go drop the football somewhere else. But if you don't get a guy like that, I want him here because he's talented. But I said all that to say this. Cam Sims had a bunch of drops this year. Steven Sims had a bunch of drops this year. We know how we feel about, I told you, you know how I feel about Isaiah Wright. He comes a dime a dozen. You can find another Isaiah Wright undrafted this year in the draft. Like, you don't have to invest in Isaiah Wright again next year. But I think they like him. In any event, we do need speed at receiver. I agree with you. And they're going to do something about it. Trust me, we won't go back into 2021. We won't go back into the season with just Terry McLaurin and Steven Sims as the 2 guys that can run. Trust me, they're going to upgrade the receiver position. Even if it's only 1 guy, they're going to upgrade the speed at receiver. Trust me. You don't have to worry about that. All right. Got another super chat. This one is from Metaphor. Thank you for tripling up, Metaphor. Greatly appreciate you. My man, Metaphor, writes, "To Marty's, a hopeful win in Washington. My name's Martin." I hope you're right. The more the merrier for Martins. Just had my man Martin Matthews double up. So add a 3rd Martin in there. All right. Bunch of Martins. Hopefully we get some wins. We'll see what happens. But remember, Martin Mayhew, Marty Herney, your name is Martin. It's a bunch of Martins around here, man. Hopefully they know what the hell they're doing. Hopefully, and again, hopefully Ron knows what the hell he's doing because he brought these guys here. So we'll see what happens. Got another super chat. This one is from Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat, Metaphor. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for your fourth of the night metaphor, who writes, John Ross, Curtis Samuels, I don't know, a bunch of two first names. Look, I don't trust Curtis Samuel. It's not Samuels with an S, because that would classify it as a last name. His name is Curtis Samuel. It's two first names. It's part of the reason I don't trust his ass. I already told you I don't trust him. Now, Ross, you could classify that as a first name. I get Ross is a last name for me. So, you could look at it as two first names. I don't look at John Ross as two first names. But Curtis Samuel, he's a two first namer. I don't trust him. I told you never, ever trust a man with two first names. So I told you I want no parts of him. It's not what I want. It's what we're probably going to get in Washington. And I've come around to that fact already. So it's okay. I understand what it is. I know how the game goes. Got another super chat. This one is from JDSG. Thank you for the super chat, JDSG, who writes, Houston just hired David Culley as their coach. We talked about that already. David Culley coming in, ex-Baltimore Ravens assistant head coach, wide receivers coach, and passing game coordinator, the next head man in Houston. We did talk about that earlier in the show. Thank you for updating us again, JDSG. So that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. We'll go ahead and go and glide to the side. I really thank you guys for joining me on this late night edition of the Louie T Network podcast, episode 134. This ran a lot longer than I thought it was going to, but I was down for that. I was down for it. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me on a Wednesday night. Shit, it ain't nothing to do anyway, right? I mean, what you gonna watch? NBA basketball? I mean, what are we talking about here? What you gonna watch? The association? I really appreciate you. We got no football this week, so I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules and the things that you could be doing other than this, game heading it up. You could be playing 2K. You could be playing Call of Duty right now. But you're here chopping it up with me, man, and that's why I love you guys. Really do appreciate you guys. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, though. And I appreciate you. If you haven't already done so, before we get out of here, you know what time it is. Hit that like button if you haven't already done that. Hit the subscribe button to sub up the channel. A lot of great content coming out of this channel and a lot more in store. Turn on that notification bell. This is a great example. This podcast episode is the perfect example of why you should turn on your notification bell, because you just don't know when the hell. I don't even know sometimes when the hell I'm going live. So turn on that notification bell if you haven't turned that on already. With that being said, if you are one of those people that consumes this podcast on a different platform other than YouTube, and you're out there listening to this on Apple, on Google, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, Spotify, wherever, I appreciate you too. Make sure you rate and comment and give this thing 5 stars if you can. All right. Really helps in the promotion of this podcast. Can't thank you guys enough for all that you do for the Louie T Network. That said, I'm your man, Louie T, and this has been the Louie T Network podcast, episode 134 in the books. I'll see you guys on Friday. I think I'll see you on Friday for episode 135. We'll see. Look, you know how it goes. And in any event, you guys have a good one. Take care. Stay safe.
Louie T Network.